Good morning, guys, and welcome to the podcast. I've got a quick statement for you today. What if we were able to dive into the heartbeat of digital health innovation? And today we have a guest, Richard Kedziora. He's co-founder and CEO of Estenda Solutions out of Pennsylvania, and he's got 2 decades in digital health. We're going to be talking about AI, machine learning, how is technology shaping the future of healthcare. And I'm really happy to have him on the show to add value to the audience. So, Richard, welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, briefly introduce yourself and we'll dive into the questions.
Yeah, I did a pretty good job at the quick overview. My name is RJ Kedziora, I'm co-founder of Estenda Solutions, and we are a professional services firm focused on digital health world, healthcare, med tech, and custom software data analytics and AI. And we just love problem solving is really the core and the heart of what we do. Very much on, I think of as the patient-focused side. How do we help improve health and wellness in people? And that might be directly to patients or developing solutions for healthcare practitioners or large corporations developing projects and startups that they're developing to take out into the world. So fascinating journey in the last 20 years.
Yeah, indeed. And so today we're gonna talk all about the evolution of digital health, integrating AI in healthcare challenges. So if any of that is of interest to the audience, be sure to stay till the very end. We're gonna talk about so many new things. So because you've got 20-year career span, how has digital health evolved from where you started to what it looks like today? And what are some pivotal moments in the evolution?
Yeah, when I think about that, and it's always interesting to think of 2 decades of experience in healthcare. We were fortunate and got our start in 2003 with military healthcare and the VA. They had electronic medical records. But if you think back to the early 2000s, that was before smartphones. Like the iPhone wasn't around. Facebook and social media really wasn't a thing just at that point in time. And healthcare is the last industry to really embrace data. The industry has definitely embraced technology, like hardware and imaging from that aspects, but data has been coming along. So when I think about that transition of over the last 2 decades, it really started of like, how do we acquire this information? How do we get it into electronic format to be able to make use of it and make sense of that information? Fast forward 2 decades now, most healthcare practitioners, health systems have electronic medical record systems. Wearables have exploded. I saw an infographic the other day with probably about 30 different potential devices you could wear on your body to track some biometric piece of information. So now there's just so much information, it's overwhelming. And how do you figure out what to do with it? Those are probably the biggest things.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time I did healthcare. I did healthcare IT consulting for Epic and Cerner, and the world runs on data now, even like the biggest companies, Google and Meta. And you're right in the fact that healthcare is the last thing to change. So if I were to introduce this idea of artificial intelligence, because that's like everybody's saying that AI is going to be a game changer for healthcare. It's like people have tried to change healthcare without much success. And how is artificial intelligence transforming healthcare? Can you give some examples and what are specific AI-driven projects that you're doing that have improved health outcomes?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and healthcare does need to take a cautionary approach because we are talking about the health of people. So the bar has to be a little higher from that perspective. It's one thing to develop an accounting system, an inventory management system, or use AI for improved shopping experience kind of thing. The threshold is different in healthcare. So we do have to take a precautionary approach. But we also have in America here and probably even globally an obesity challenge. We have mental health challenges, and there's not enough people to be able to care for everybody that needs that. And so I think that's the biggest advantage that we're seeing of these AI tools. How can we use them to care for more people? How can we be more efficient in our healthcare journey? And then, so everyone talks about today about Gen AI. Like that's the biggest topic, large language models. But there's also this forgotten aspect of AI and the machine learning, and how can it be used to look at images and understand what's going on within that image. One of our, think of it as a flagship project, is with the Indian Health Services here in the US that's responsible for the Native American population, helping care for them. Decimated, unfortunately, by diabetes. That's a big issue. And then if you have diabetes, you can get diabetic retinopathy. It's the leading cause of preventable blindness. So if we find it, we can help address it. And so we're running a program there. It's got 100 sites across the US to find the incidence of diabetic retinopathy to make a difference. And right now, those images are read by a human, but this is where the AI can come in. It's use the AI to look at those images and evaluate them. So then we can, make the whole process much more efficient. The challenge, and what's interesting about this, is some of the earliest AI machine learning algorithms approved by the FDA were around the idea of diabetic retinopathy. But what you have to think about and understand as you develop these systems even today is the concept of drift. The data or the images that's being evaluated changes over time, and what's the impact on those algorithms and what they come up with. The technology in taking the retinal images, which is the retina is the back of your eye, the technology to take those images has improved significantly. We use cameras that take a much wider field of view of information. So those older algorithms, machine learning that were trained, don't work on these current images. So some of our current projects are doing just that, training new machine learning algorithms using those images. We actually just published something in JAMA Ophthalmology showcasing those results to be able to make a difference and scale those programs even better. But then if you look at the Gen AI, huge use case today, Epic's referenced Epic, other EMRs are doing it. I saw something with 80 vendors now that are trying to sell ambient listening solutions. EMRs are designed for capturing data. They weren't really designed or driven around patient encounters. And you probably talk to 10 doctors and 10 of them are gonna be like, yeah, I'm not a fan of my EMR, unfortunately. That is improving. The vendors are bringing more of the user experience design to these systems to help improve them. But if you can have the AI listen to the conversation in the room and bring information to the table and take those notes, we're going to be so much better off. Is the first thing, but then also summarizing the content of that EMR. So if you go back and you're old enough to remember the paper notes, it was pretty easy to scan through a paper file, and there's usually some color coding, some notes on the first page of the folder, so you could get the understanding of that patient really quickly as a physician or a nurse. It's a lot harder to do that in the EMR. So let's use the AI capabilities to summarize that medical information and summarize the finding, what is pertinent to that encounter. And I'm waiting and love, hey, someone wants to do this, call us up and we'll work together. I want to bring those two things together. So as the technology is listening to the encounter and aware of what's going on with the patient and current medical research, because medical research explodes. There's so much, you can't keep up with it today. So bring those three things together and let the AI technology surface questions today to the physician. Hey, maybe you should ask this, or what about this to help out this particular patient? And then that doctor, the nurse, using their judgment can decide, okay, this does make sense in context, and ask their patient to improve that encounter. I think it's a huge capability that's going to be changing the world.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, there's a lot of, use cases, and I know a lot of great institutions, they're doing similar or different things. Talk about, because you were talking about healthcare is highly regulated, and it's a very slow moving industry. So what are some challenges you face when developing really novel software, AI applications for healthcare? How do you overcome them? Are they more on the regulatory front? Are they more on the other types of challenges? Elaborate on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Our customers vary between the large corporations that do have the personnel, the resources that understand what it means to develop a system to go through FDA regulatory approval here, EU, globally, as we've done some of these projects. And then also we have worked with startups where they're just, deer in the headlights of what does it mean to develop a product that has to go through FDA approval? There is often a lot of education that happens as part of that. First thing, FDA is your friend. They're there to help you and advise you. You should not be afraid of them. They will definitely work with you. But it makes it interesting. Estenda as an organization is ISO 13485 certified, which basically means we have a well-documented software development process, very SOP and checklist driven, to make sure that we're considering all of the things that you need to think about developing a solution that is going to go through that regulatory process. Cybersecurity is a big one in any industry. You should consider cybersecurity, but particularly with your healthcare data. If you think about that information getting stolen, it's an interesting fact that credit card information is less valuable than your medical record information on the black market. You do have to think of cybersecurity first and foremost when you're developing these solutions. First, do no harm. Okay, as we develop these solutions, reference the idea that we're very much on the cutting edge of things that we create and the customers that we work with. And we're going to make sure they actually work. It's one thing for a bunch of doctors, PhDs, scientists to sit in a room and be like, hey, we have this great idea. Make sure it works in the real world. We can work with your clinical staff, your PhDs, but we also have PhDs on staff to help drive those studies and outcomes and write those peer-reviewed clinical journals.
Yeah. A follow-up question I have for you is, because you talked about just a lot of different challenges, and one thing I wanted to ask your opinion on is this idea of, because people are saying the healthcare is getting so expensive that it's going to become unbundled, basically meaning that a lot of the care and the conditions are going to be happening at home. There's talk about like doctors visiting homes instead of going to hospitals, and the only use case for a hospital is going to be like if you're sick and dying, or if you need some acute form of care. So what are your thoughts on just using technology and AI to unbundle the healthcare industry? Talk about wearables, remote monitoring as well, and sensors and this whole area.
Yeah. How many hours do you have? It's a topic that's near and dear to my heart because I love the idea of data, of making information become aware and finding those patterns, but taking it to the next level of then providing recommendations like, how can I help you as an individual make a difference and change? So we do a lot of work in diabetes and chronic conditions, and as more and more information is available, you can better understand what's happening outside of the four walls of that doctor's office, of that hospital. It's if you get sick, you go to the health system, you're there you probably wait for an hour, see the doctor for, if you're lucky, 10 minutes. So much of your health and wellness is about what you do at home on your own. And so if you can eat better, move, you don't necessarily have to exercise. Exercise is good, but start with just moving. There's a continuous glucose monitors for patients with diabetes or on the market where in some cases they take a reading every minute, but they've also now are selling glucose meters, continuous glucose meters for people without diabetes. And I'm fortunate that I don't have diabetes and I wore one of these. I intimately know the science. I've developed these systems with other doctors and PhDs, but it was so meaningful to see how my glucose trended after I ate and how I experimented on myself. It was like, okay, I'm gonna eat a meal and then sit down, and you could see the profile. And the next day I would eat the same meal and go for a walk. And it made a difference. I know the science, I know that works, but to then see it was very meaningful. So as we move forward, I think one, we all have to take a little more accountability for our own health and wellness. It is about what we do as individuals. But two, how can we use those wearables, one, to learn and educate ourselves about eating better, what it means to move. And then as we get even older, and as the boomers start getting older and aging at home, my parents are approaching their 80s, and fortunately they're in pretty good health, but you can see the future where them and others are going to have to move to assisted care facilities. Where do they want to be? They want to be at home. Their comfortable environment, somewhere where they lived for 30 or 40 years. They want to stay there. So how do we use the power of technology and that remote monitoring to better understand what's going on? So the technology exists in a lot of these cases. Is, okay, I want to understand that my mother got out of bed this morning, used the facilities, started the coffee machine, opened and closed the refrigerator. It's okay, here's their normal pattern of behavior. I know they're doing good this morning. But okay, tomorrow they don't get up at their normal time. They haven't turned on the coffee pot. Okay, let me call it. Let's see what's going on. It's not invasive. There's not a camera, that's watching them or anything like that. It's passive, but it does give you important and useful elements to that. Hey, call mom up, see how she's doing.
Mm. Yeah, interesting. And how do you think this also plays a role with this whole new area of genomics, epigenetics, type therapies, personalized therapy? Talk about how this factors in this kind of new area of medicine.
It's definitely that's a huge frontier thing. And I'm fascinated by that. I've done the 23andMe and genetic profiles to see what's all sorts of information about myself and asparagus. Can I smell asparagus and this, that, and the other thing? It makes it fascinating. But that's that where we can get the field of medicine down to that N of one person. What makes a difference for you as an individual versus a population kind of thing. And that's where the power of that, we're still a little ways away from that, but where they can do gene editing and modifying stuff to improve hearing loss. That was something, I think it was this year, if not the end of last year. There's like genetic modification to improve hearing loss. It's just fascinating. So lots of potential there.
Yeah. The other question I have for you is with the Trump election, and now he's appointed Kennedy in there, and Kennedy said the whole healthcare system is designed to make us sick, and it's giving handouts to the pharmaceutical and medical device companies and our food supply. And basically, how do you think this whole thing, this rate with bureaucracy and regulation and kind of the incumbents, and with Kennedy coming in, how do you think this changes?
If I had the genie, the magic lamp to become it is going to be an interesting experience to see what happens because it's not the norm. It is not what we're used to, but it is interesting. Yes, he has extreme viewpoints on some hands and maybe doesn't express the ideas in the best fashion than others. And so there's definitely things I completely disagree with. Like vaccines are a good thing. They don't cause autism. It's been proven time and time again. It's not an issue. Unfortunately, he holds on to some of these older beliefs. But on the other hand, some of the ideas of improving our food system and getting rid of some things that in the EU, for instance, have been banned for a long time, are still in our food system. That's not a bad thing. Like, how do we examine and look at those and our challenges? I'm personally frustrated by like the nutrition science and what the government recommends in terms of a good diet. Like they just revamped it and they're very hesitant to like say ultra processed foods are bad for you. Okay, the science may be questionable when you look at the detailed science in the studies, but okay, ultra processed food is not good for us. So how do we adjust our messaging and to be able to do that? So I'm cautiously optimistic, but it's definitely going to be a bumpy ride.
Yeah. Yeah, it's gonna be really interesting. Just this whole, it's like basically it's ripping the band-aid off. I know we have a couple more minutes left, and looking ahead, what are some of the most innovative projects or directions you see Estenda focusing on, and how can people find you and reach out to you and learn more about the work that you're doing?
Yeah, thank you. It's definitely the merger of this data and the use of Gen AI, and how do we bring that to the patients in a meaningful fashion? I talked to a lot of startup organizations like, oh, we have this data and we're going to show this patterns to the doctor. What is he going to do with it? You've got 10 minutes. You really have to go to that next level of how do you provide the recommendations, the information, guidelines, suggestions to the improving health and wellness and the treatment of the individual. And through the use of the Gen AI technology, meet the patient where they're at in their health literacy journey. Being diagnosed with cancer is tragic. It is difficult to deal with, when you leave that doctor's office, you're not going to remember what they said and what they talked about. So how can you use that as a follow-up? And if the patient doesn't understand the messaging, it's very easy in a large language model when you're conversing with it, either type or even voice as we are talking, be like, can you make that easier for me to understand? I don't understand quantum mechanics. I have a sister that is studying it at MIT, and she talks about quantum mechanics, and it's way over my head. But I can go to ChatGPT and the others and be like, explain it to me like a fifth grader. And if I still don't get it, explain it to me like I'm in kindergarten. And it will come up with the analogy such that I can understand it. And I think that's a powerful technology to meet people where they are.
Yeah. Interesting. And how can people contact you and find out more about you?
Yeah, is a couple places. Estenda, or we can link it in the show notes. Our website is a good source, and I'm always out there on LinkedIn. It's good. I'm at a conference, the HIT Lab conference in New York City, the first week of December, talking about AI in healthcare. Always fascinating to have those discussions. But yeah, reach out. Love to just talk about this technology and where it's going and exploring the new possibilities and seeing how we can help other people.
Yeah. I really enjoyed this conversation and continue the great work.
Thank you. Yeah, I enjoyed this.